Which was your worst, I knew I shouldn't have done this moment? I accepted the responsibility of cooking way too much for an event. I just kept saying yes. The day came and I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off. I grabbed the grate in the oven to pull it out with my bare hands. Why didn't I use oven mitts? I was pissed. So I kept going and needed to strain noodles and grabbed them off the stove and started straining them on my way to the sink. Hot water all over my legs and feet. Worst cooking day of my life. Bully started walking away and my amazing brain came up with, yeah, you better walk away. He then turned around and I shit bricks. Should have picked them up and thrown them at him. I was about 5 years old and the next door neighbors took me to meet their horses. The mom gave very clear and explicit instructions on how to be near and handle the horses and proceeded to start to brush one of them. In my infinite wisdom, I walked behind the horse and very timidly grazed its beautiful tail with my small hand. That's the day I became the 1978 Connecticut State Rodeo Champion. With lightning speed I was hit with a force I wouldn't again feel until as an adult I was in a car accident. I was launched out of the stall and halfway across the common area. As I lay stunned, gasping for breath, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Not gonna lie dude. It's a wonder you're alive. A horse kick to the skull can be deadly, let alone to a child. Got distracted while my wok with some oil in it was heating up. When I snapped back to reality, my hand just automatically threw in the dried chili flakes. It was like an out-of-body experience. My brain couldn't stop my hand in time. And that's how I maced myself and the dog. Ordering just one more drink. I was working as a stunt man and it was my last performance with a particular stunt group. They wanted me to do a particularly dangerous version of a stunt that I was pretty uncomfortable with. I'd done the regular version thousands of times and could practically do it in my sleep. I agreed to do it because T was just the one time. What were the odds of me being hurt doing it just the one time? I thought. Later that day I was in the second hospital. After being airlifted from the first because my injuries were too severe for it. Had literally a gallon of blood transfusions. They weighed me before and after and life-saving surgery. If you have a bad feeling about something, take it seriously. When I was around 6, a few neighbors about my age and I were hanging out in the back area of a local park, and found this weird shoebox half buried near the edge of a creek. We were apprehensive, but we dug it up and opened it, finding a few Ziploc bags of white powder, which I immediately thought to be some kind of drugs. We ended up throwing the bags into a nearby creek, and stomping on the box until it was unrecognizable, tossing it in the creek too. To this day, I still have no idea what we found, only that I probably should have listened to the premonition I felt. I flushed a houseplant down a toilet. I didn't want to make my parents mad at me for breaking the house plant and I wanted to get rid of the evidence. So naturally I thought the best way to get rid of it was to flush it down the toilet. Flushed the toilet and none of the dirt went down. Started to panic and continued to flush for 20 minutes straight. Managed to get rid of all of it somehow. Now later I realized that that probably wasn't at all good for either the environment nor the plumbing system. It's a vague memory. I think I was around 3 or 4, maybe 5. I had this big goof of a German Shepherd who was my best friend and guardian, but who liked to eat bugs and lizards. We were living in Nicaragua, and so bugs and lizards were not in short supply. I don't know why I decided to copy the dog, but I saw a huge spider and decided to eat it. I have this memory that I'm sure has been exaggerated, but I clearly remember my little hand clasping a huge spider by the abdomen, legs sticking out between my fingers, and popping it into my mouth. I bit down, chewed, and still to this day have a vivid memory of the legs dangling out of my mouth as I ate this giant. It tasted awful, and it felt so terrible to bite down onto. I have occasional nightmares about it now, and I'm in my mid-40s. I want to time travel just to tell 3 or 4-year-old me, don't eat that spider. Don't eat absolutely massive spiders, folks. You'll regret it. Going to my insane ex's house alone to pick up my shit that I didn't actually care about. We broke up because she tried to stab me when I got home from drinking at the bar with a few friends. When I was probably 12, my neighbors across the street were having a Super Bowl house party. My entire family went over. At one point I went back to the house, happened to notice my mom's cigarettes laying on the counter, and being an edgy skater kid I already had a lighter hidden in my room. I decided that instead of going out back and smoking one that I would smoke it in the bathroom. Didn't realize how long they smelled after you smoked them. When I was around 12 I noticed that nail polish remover felt cold and kind of nice as it evaporated from my fingers, so I decided to put some on my vagina. The toilet is opposite the laundry hamper in my bathroom. I was getting undressed for a shower and casually tossed my socks into the toilet. As soon as they left my hands, I let out a strangled no, which sent my husband running in to start laughing at me for the rest of the night. I live on a property with horses and have been around them my whole life. One day, little 4-year-old me was given a small container of bubbles to entertain myself with while my mum did the washing. I hear a stomp behind me and realize that my mum's stallion had come up behind me. He hates kids but was curious about the bubbles. Being the bright and caring little girl I was, I blew some bubbles in his direction, thinking he wanted some. He didn't want bubbles. Almost immediately, I was kicked in the face. His intention was to pop the bubbles but instead ended up giving me a GTA wasted screen to the head. Landed on the concrete, bleeding from my upper lip in which later needed to be glued back together. Have a scar now and a slightly traumatized mother. In 4th grade my parents remodeled the kitchen. This involved digging up part of the foundation to rebuild the deck. As such we had a giant dirt pile in the backyard. I was playing on it, jumped off, tripped and fell face first on concrete. I immediately knew something was wrong. I ran inside and opened my mouth and looked in the bathroom mirror. I was missing about 1/3 of my top right front tooth. I distinctly recall saying out loud, "Yup, it's gone." I ate 3 packs of noodles with 12 meatballs in 20 minutes. I'm assuming college is in this context for some reason. Maybe. I pushed a pot of hot oil off the stove top. Funny thing about physics, the oil splashed back all over my hand. I bought the house we'd been renting for a few years without getting an inspection first. We were trying to do it super cheap. And I told my wife, "Look, we already know everything that's wrong with this house. Why bother getting an inspection?" Follow up, we did not know everything that was wrong with this house, nor how expensive it would be to fix those things. A lot of people overlook how expensive an inspector actually isn't. Day 2 of signing up for the army. Moment I finally lost control of the dolly and the refrigerator that was strapped to it started bouncing down the stairway like a rocket. Trying to move it alone is what I should not have done. My suspicion was confirmed a second later when it slammed full speed into the concrete wall at the bottom of the stairs and came to a dead stop. Not surprisingly, it never worked after that, so I immediately had to lug it back out of the basement and pay for disposal. 0/10. Would not recommend. When I was 6 years old and stuck my little finger in a pencil sharpener and twisted it a few times like it was a pencil, I nearly passed out. Maybe you realized at an early age that you weren't that sharp. I offered to teach the new guy at the hospital how to take a body down the freezer. We only had 4 freezers and on this particular day they were all full. It was 1 a.m. when we got down there and realized this. Protocol is when all the freezers are full, you have to take the body out that's been in the freezer the longest and put it on the harvesting table. Well, the gentleman who had passed from alcohol poisoning was roughly 300 pounds and was unfortunately the one who had been in there the longest, so the security guard, myself, and the trainee had to lift this guy out of the bottom freezer and onto the harvesting table and then carry 6 trash bags full of ice from the kitchen back to the morgue. We didn't leave until 3 a.m. and the trainee quit the following day. 7th grade one accepted a dare to slap this girl on the butt. Turns out the principal was like 10 feet behind me and saw the whole thing. Took me straight to his office but something else came up and he told me he'd come pull me out of class later to discuss further. Enough time goes by that I assume he forgot. When he eventually shows up, he catches me looking at naked villagers in a National Geographic. Man, I'm living through it hard right now. I had a job offer for a job I really wanted because it seemed like something I needed to have on my resume. But positions are fairly competitive. Art 3 clerkship. I had researched my boss and read some pretty terrible things about them, and it required moving to a city I really did not want to live in. But I threw caution to the wind. Ignored my gut feeling about all this even after being explicitly warned about the job by another coworker and took the job. After the brief feeling of relief at finally getting the position, I spent months fearing the job as I studied for the bar. The entire time trying to tell myself it wouldn't be that bad, and then it turned out it was even worse. The only bright spot is it was a year-long gig and it's nearly over. But it's been a tough year and it's basically all my own fault and entirely predictable. Hey man, this is life. You didn't make a mistake. You took a chance and that is admirable. You got through it and now you're better off after. I have done a fair share of bullshit work, but I regret none of it. When you finally do land that job that resonates inside of you, You will be able to slog through the down times solely based off the fact of hey, at least it ain't, insert here. Cheers to your year in hell. I touched the coil in a toaster with a knife while it was switched on. When the power in the house cut out, I thought I should not have done that. When I told my father what I'd done, I knew for sure I should not have done that. No, I didn't get a beating. Dad was more worried about my well-being than anything else. Responding to a, hey, how've you been? FB message from an ex. And also, pretty much any time I've loaned a person money. Microwaving raw cookie dough. I broiled burger patties on a shallow cookie sheet and the small lake of grease that accumulated caught fire. Burgers were great though.